Part 2, Frey and Lest. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is part 2 of my mini-series going over the possible backstories for the main characters of the Rune Factory series and the side quests that would reveal them. Last time we went over the main character of the first Rune Factory game, Rune, and normally you'd expect the next character to be talked about to be the main character of Rune Factory 2, right? Well, no. This is because of how the story of Rune Factory 2 is structured. When you first start the game, it has you playing the amnesiac Earthmate Kyle. However, while playing as Kyle, you'll find that you can only explore a small chunk of the dungeons, as the rest of the dungeons are blocked off by fences, which you assume you need to progress the story in town in order to get past. And you'd be right, but not in the way you'd think. After getting married, having a child, and building a school, you will witness a cutscene set an undetermined amount of time after the school's building, in which it is revealed that Kyle has regained his memories and came to town in order to fill a mission, which he now must leave to do so. It is then that you are forced to play as one of the two children that Kyle and his spouse have had for the rest of the game. Yep. The part of the story where you play as the amnesiac is just an overly long, glorified tutorial, and the actual main character is the Earthmate's child, either Aaron or Arya. The animated cutscenes show them as twins, but the one you didn't select never shows up in the actual game. And because the actual main character doesn't have amnesia, they don't qualify for this series. So with them out of the way, you'd think the next one would be the main character of Rune Factory 3. But again, no. Because, like I mentioned in the last video, Mika's past is directly linked to the main plot and does get revealed, so he's also out of the running. So that means the next game we're going to be talking about is Rune Factory 4 and its main characters, Frey and Lest. Rune Factory 4 is the first game to give you the option to play as either a boy or a girl, and the story revolves around you saving a dragon god and acting as a prince or princess. This game hints a lot at who Frey/Lest were before arriving in Selphia, and before I continue, I need to explain which of these two I consider to be canon to the story, as it's important to understand why I come to some of the conclusions I do for their backstory. Personally, I consider Frey to be canon, and no, that's not because I'm a girl. It's because I consider Doug to be the canon love interest. Like Mist with Rune, Mana with Kyle, and Shara with Mika. With these girls, you can tell that they're the character the MC is supposed to end up with because they're the first person they meet at the start of the game, and are even featured on the box art. Now, in the case of Rune Factory 4, the characters featured on the box are the main characters, the dragon goddess Venti, and the first three guardians you save in the game. And the first character the MC meets upon entering the town is Venti. However, there is a certain detail within this game that only applies to Doug, and is the reason I consider him canon. You literally cannot increase his friendship/love score past level 3 until after you enter the second act of the game's plot. This guy and his story is so central to the main plot of the game, you literally can't romance him until you hit the halfway point. This is why I consider him the canon LI, and thus why I consider Frey the canon MC. Now that we've established that, let's look at what we know about Frey's backstory and what is heavily implied. Unlike previous entries in the series, we actually get to see the moment Frey/Lest loses their memories and are first introduced to them before it happens. When we meet Frey/Lest, they are riding on an airship heading to an undisclosed location and carrying something of great importance. Something so important that Setch's soldiers stow away on the airship in order to steal it. It is actually during the fight with them that Frey/Lest loses their memories and the thing that they'd been carrying after taking a blow to the head. At the end of the first act, we find little blue orbs known as rune spheres and can put together via context clues that these are the objects that Frey/Lest had been carrying at the start of the game. This is then confirmed at the start of Act 2. Then, much later, in the final stage of Act 3, we are treated to echoes of the past that reveal to us that the rune spheres were created by the Earthmates with the expressed goal of saving Venti and allowing the Guardians to be finally set free. And in the very last echo, Frey/Lest meet their alternate reality self, who is the character you didn't pick, in which it is hard confirmed that they'd been tasked by the Earthmates to deliver the rune spheres to Venti. So this all tells us a few things. 1. The Earthmates seem to function a little like the Wizarding World from Harry Potter, just without the secrecy. They have their own society, but they can also be in families that are not part of that society. 2. The Earthmates spent literal generations to create the rune spheres in order to save these people and ensure the safety of the world, which in all honesty seems to be some kind of magically assigned role at this point. And 3. Frey/Lest was someone important enough to be given such an important mission. Also, with my belief that Frey is the canon MC, we need to look at her character design. The girl is literally wearing a tiara. Is it any wonder they thought she was the royal they'd been expecting to arrive? But maybe Venti and the others were closer than they thought. They just got who they were the princess/prince of wrong. Yep, my headcanon is that Frey/Lest is the princess/prince of the Earthmates. So now that we've got all that established, I can get into the real meat and potatoes of this video. Now, due to the context of the story, the quest in which Frey/Lest, whom for the sake of simplicity I'm just going to refer to as Frey, discovers their past, can't happen any sooner than the post-game. As in, after the end of Act 3, where Venti is returned to her rightful place in Selphia. The reason for that being that the small snippets of backstory and context we get for the creation of the rune spheres and Frey's own backstory are very big and important reveals for the final act. So having the whole story revealed before the final act would lessen the impact of the finale. So it needs to be a side quest that is unlocked after the main story is complete. That being said, I think this side quest would be activated like one of the love events for the bachelors and bachelorettes, where it's activated randomly a certain number of days after you've completed the main plot. I think it would also make a lot of sense for the other requirement for this event to be completing the quest board quest of increasing the friendship of everyone in town to level 10. Frey wakes up and is either greeted by her spouse or by one of the butlers of the palace, either Vishnal or Kolrika, who then inform her of rumours going around that someone strange is hanging around the area. Due to having increased everyone's friendship to 10 by now, you likely would have activated the town event where a strange person was wandering around asking questions about Frey and making it seem like the royal family in the capital had caught on to the fact that Frey and Arthur had switched places. And if so, Frey makes a comment referring to that very event. Just as the loyal butler is about to tell her more about the stranger and even describe them, Venti calls out to them from her room, asking Frey to come over. When Frey does, she sees a face that is both familiar and unfamiliar. It's a face that she saw when she was travelling through Rune Prana to bring Venti back. There in the audience room with Venti is Lest. The young man turns to her and his eyes immediately widen in shock before they fill with tears of joy. With a shout of "Sister," he runs up to Frey and pulls her into a hug. Shocked, Frey asks just what in the world is going on, causing Lest to let go of her and start ranting about how she had him and their parents worried sick since she hadn't sent them even a single letter since she started her mission. Before the situation can get any more out of hand, Venti calls for their attention, explaining to Lest about Frey's amnesia. Lest is clearly upset at the fact that his sister doesn't remember him, revealing that they're twins in the process of the conversation. The scene ends, and in order to activate the next few scenes, Frey will need to walk into different areas of the town. In the housing area, Lest will be shown to be talking with the characters that live there, asking about how his sister has been doing. He particularly asks Jones and Nancy, the town's doctor couple, if there's any way to bring back Frey's memories. Jones and Nancy let him down gently, explaining that if her memories were going to come back, they would have done so long by now. On Melody Street, he is seen talking with the residents of that street, particularly with Doug, and getting a rundown of everything that Frey has been up to since arriving. Lest seems less than impressed at the fact that Doug was once a spy for the Setchus Empire, but recognizes that they were manipulating him, and even tries to apologize for the destruction of Doug's old home and clan. As he explains it, it's the duty of the Earthmates to ensure balance and peace in the world, and it's a failure of duty that such an atrocity was able to happen in the first place. Doug shoots that right down, telling Lest that no one is to blame for what happened to his people except for the Setchus Empire. He tells Lest that it was Frey that showed him that blaming people who had nothing to do with what happened is misguided and only leads to more people getting hurt. On Airship Way, Lest will be talking to the Guardians, expressing his happiness that they were able to be relieved of their duties as maintainers of the world's balance, while the Earthmates thought of a more permanent solution. The Guardians will make comments about how formally he speaks and about how different it is to Frey. This shocks Lest as he tells them that she is more formal than he is. To his shock, however, the Guardians tell him that she's actually very informal and speaks to everyone like she would a friend. They even call it one of her best qualities. This scene ends with Lest looking a bit sad for some reason. And finally, the scene in the town square has Lest talking to the residents of the palace, particularly Frey's spouse and child if the player has gotten married and had one yet. If Frey has had a family of her own, the conversation will mostly be with them. If not, it will be with the palace butlers and Arthur. This conversation mostly revolves around Frey's duties as an acting princess, if the butlers are in the focus, or the fact that Frey has fallen in love and possibly had a child without him or their parents knowing. It's really hitting him just how much of his sister's life he's missed. The next scene will activate the next day after Frey finds Lest at Dragon Lake. There, they begin to talk, with the two of them expressing how awkward and painful this situation is for both of them. For Frey, she'd accepted a long time ago that she was never going to get her memories back, and had chosen to instead be grateful for the memories and the life that she's built in Selphia. Meanwhile, for Lest, he's spent literally his whole life with his twin, and the one time they're forced to split up to take on different missions, Frey's to deliver the rune spheres to Selphia, and Lest's to investigate the suspicious activity in other parts of Norad, he returns home to discover that not only has his twin not returned when her mission should have been much shorter, but no one has even heard from her in years, and now that he's found her, he might as well be a stranger to her, even though they had once been inseparable. Curious, Frey asks why it had taken him so long to return home. To which Lest explains that the suspicious activity had actually been Setchus forces preparing for the invasion that had happened in the final act of the second part of the main plot. Setchus hadn't just invaded from Selphia's side, they had launched a massive multi-pronged invasion in order to split the combined forces of Norad and the Earthmate nation in as many different directions as possible. He explains to Frey that some areas of Norad were hit worse than others, and the losses are still being counted. This is foreshadowing to one of the major plot points of Rune Factory 5, in case you were wondering. Not liking the sad look on Lest's face, Frey tries to think of a way to cheer him up and gets an idea. Turning back to Lest, she suggests that they go out and take on a dungeon together. Surprised, Lest asks why, and Frey points out that if they were inseparable until the Rune Sphere and investigation missions forced them apart, then it means that they must have gone on other missions together, right? So maybe if they go into a dungeon together as if they were on a mission, maybe it'll bring back some of her memories. Agreeing to try it out, Lest asks what dungeon they're going to take on, since he doesn't know the area. Frey decides that they should take on Rune Prana, since it's the place where she'd first seen Lest's face. The next day, they go to Rune Prana and go from floor 1 to 7. The teleportation gates are deactivated for this event for obvious reasons, but all of the doors and so on are still open, so you don't have to go through this the long way again. You can just take a direct route to the next floor, only stopped by the respawned boss monsters. In the first room of each floor, Lest and Frey have a cute little bonding moment. Be it them talking about their preferred weapons, the fact that they are so in sync with each other, etc. Eventually, Frey and Lest reach the room where Frey had encountered the echo of Lest during the final act of Part 3, and another echo is played. This one showing Frey talking about how her brother has gone missing and how she's going to find him. It is here that it is revealed that the difference between the AU that Frey saw and the world she lives in is who went on which mission. And if their roles were reversed, Frey would have tried to do for him what he has been trying to do for her. After the echo, Lest asks if Frey has regained any of her memories. Unfortunately, the answer is no, but Frey is still happy that they did this. As she explains it, while her old memories may be gone, that doesn't mean that they're bonders. The fact that Lest was able to read her movements and work with her so seamlessly is proof of how well he knows her. And the fact that he came all of this way to find her the moment he found out she was missing shows how much he cares. The past they shared may only be known to one of them now, but that doesn't make him any less her brother. And now they have at least one shared memory, and she hopes many more to come. With both twins receiving closure for the gap that was brought on by a whack to the head, they return to Selphia, and we immediately get the next cutscene. Lest is leaving Selphia, as there's still a lot of work to do in the aftermath of the Setchus invasion. However, he promises to visit whenever he can, and the event ends. After this, Lest will visit the town during certain festivals, like New Year's, the Firefly Festival, White Day and Christmas, as well as the birthdays of Frey, her spouse, and her child. Because one of the biggest character moments and one of the biggest tearjerkers in this game is when Venti is apologizing to the main character about not being able to keep her promise to restore their memories, only for Frey/Lest to tell her that she did keep her promise by helping them create new memories with her and everyone in Selphia, it didn't feel right for them to regain their memories like Rune had. So, in order to keep with the spirit of forging new memories rather than dwelling on old ones that might never come back, I had that while Frey/Lest never regains their memories, they, and the player by extension, do still get answers and closure. And that's it for this part, everyone. Please let me know your thoughts down below, and what your personal headcanon for Frey and Lest is. And join me next time for the main characters of Rune Factory 5, Alice and Ares. I'm Rune, see you next chapter.